Yes, I'm ready whenever.
Good to go.
Okay. Hi, everyone. We're going to get this session going. Thank you so much for being here. I am Yeana Kwagh. I'm from EPA Region 9, and I'm the Harmful Algal Bloom Coordinator for our region. I'm really excited to speak here today and to share sort of a compilation of different resources that EPA has to offer on this growing area of concern. We have a really great lineup of speakers with my colleagues, and John Parker and Sarah Bryan, who is online, to share their experience working with EPA and their experience working on HABs as well. So I want you all introduce yourselves as you come up with your questions. So as an overview, I'm going to do a quick, in case harmful algal blooms are a bit newer for some of you in the audience, I'm going to do a very quick overview of harmful algal blooms and an intro to that. We're going to run through some of the Clean Water Act programs, drinking water programs, and some EPA research and lab support and how to get in touch with me about that, and then transition to talking about some specific tribal experiences and what's worked for folks. So at a very, very basic level, harmful algal blooms are rapid overgrowths of photosynthetic organisms in water. There are two sort of broad categories that these can be broken down into, each led by different federal agencies. So marine HABs, NOAA is the lead federal agency for marine HABs, and that includes blooms like what people often refer to as the red tide. This particular photo is off the coast in San Diego from last year's bloom. EPA is the lead federal agency for freshwater harmful algal blooms. So within freshwater HABs, there's another two buckets that are categories that they can fall under. The one on the left is Primesium or golden algae, and in our region this is often seen most often in Southern California and Arizona. They affect organisms with gills and have been known to cause massive fish kills when they bloom. However, they don't affect human health, mammals, or birds as much as the second category, which is cyanoHABs. And you may have heard of this referred to as blue-green algae. CyanoHABs, they're the primary area of concern at EPA due to how it, just from our mission, and how it impacts human and animal health, environmental health concerns, as well as economics. So therefore this presentation is really going to focus a lot more on the cyanoHABs piece. Cyanobacteria, it may be referred to as blue-green algae, but due to its appearance, but is not in fact algae. It is an aquatic bacteria called cyanobacteria, hence cyanoHABs. And cyanobacteria, they have the ability to photosynthesize, and they're actually really important parts of the food web. So not all blooms of cyanobacteria are bad, and not all cyanobacteria is bad. However, some cyanobacteria, the ones we're most concerned about, are the ones that produce toxins, and the ones that can produce toxins. And so sometimes cyanoHABs can be really visible and obvious, like the photos on the left of the slide, and they can appear in the water column, look very algae-like. This is called planktonic HABs, if you hear that being referenced. On the right side of the slide are photos of what we call benthic HABs, which are often found in clear water, at the bottom of clear water, and they can form mats and can be released to the surface and moved by winds or currents. And those mats are what often have the cytotoxins of concern here. Okay. CyanoHABs, they can produce also different types of cyanotoxins. So different cyanotoxins, they can affect different organs and body parts. Some common cyanotoxins that you may have encountered, they include microcystin and cylindrospermopsin, and these affect the liver and kidney respectively. Anatoxin and saxitoxin are neurotoxins that affect the nervous system and are also ones of growing concern. And cyanotoxins, they can cause serious illness and death in pets, livestock, wildlife, and however, it's not known to be lethal to humans, but it can make people sick and experience things like rashes, irritation, discomfort in the skin, eyes, lungs, and stomach. This amazing graphic here on the screen is not funny. I want to make sure the credit goes to the Big Valley and the Poma Indians and Karuk tribe, but it's a really great graphic that shows various exposure pathways based on tribal cultural uses. Exposures can be through direct or indirect contact, such as direct contact would be submersion or consumption of contaminated water, and more indirect contact would be the consumption, use, and trade of plants and animals that have been in contact with the cyano-HABs. So where do they bloom? Cyano-HABs, they commonly bloom in warm, quiet waters such as lakes and backwaters. This is a graphic by USGS, and it shows a watershed perspective on how different natural and human activity on land upstream can create conditions conducive for cyano-HAB blooms. And also that impact downstream communities and drinking water intakes. So for ideal conditions where these where cyanobacteria blooms is typically, the recipe is typically increased inputs of nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus from fertilizers, from agriculture or runoff. You can kind of see that on the left side of the photo. Also low water flows and stagnant waters, increased intensity and duration of sunlight, and related is sustained high temperatures for blooms. But cyanobacteria, they are really persistent and resistant in nature and have been known to survive varying extremes that fall outside of this ideal condition category. But they can bloom and be transported to water bodies of all kinds. This graphic, I hope, gives you sort of that big picture of all the considerations that go into understanding what contributes to harmful algal blooms and therefore what it takes to understand and address harmful algal blooms. And so, I hope this sort of sets the stage for how different EPA programs kind of all work together to look at the different angles of what we're seeing here in this watershed perspective. So I'm going to hand over the mic to my colleague, Pinkerton, to talk a little bit about some funding sources for the Clean Water Act programs.
Thanks. What does this do? Does this move this slide? Okay. I probably should have practiced that before coming up here. Okay. So yeah, as Yeana mentioned, I'm just going to talk about some of the funding opportunities to address harmful algal blooms. And I'm just going to cover a couple of the main funding grant programs that we have. There may be other opportunities, but these are the main ones we're going to discuss today. So the first one is the Clean Water Act Section 106 program. About 100 tribes in Region 9 get this funding every year. And these are some of the main program activities that are eligible and common in work plans. So water quality monitoring, outreach and education, training and travel, and HABs can be incorporated into all of these activities. So the first one, water quality monitoring, this is kind of the meat and potatoes of the 106 grant program, and you can monitor HABs as part of your 106 program. Just make sure it's in your quality assurance project plan and also in your reporting. So any of the data that you're reporting, include that HAB data, and also your water quality assessment report. So those are the three main reporting requirements that we're covering in the afternoon session. So, and also outreach and education. So if you want to do any flyers or signage, if you're seeing any harmful algal blooms in your tribal waters and you want to notify your communities about it, that's an eligible activity under the 106 program. And then also training and travel. So attending this session, for example, or other HAB-specific training opportunities could be eligible under your 106 program. And so for the 319 program, the purpose of the 319 program, or non-point source pollution program, is to assist tribes with developing and implementing polluted runoff control programs that can address critical water quality problems. So HABs could be one of them. As Yeana mentioned, high nutrient levels and specifically from runoff can contribute to harmful algal blooms. So 319 eligible projects that can help with that could be installing buffers, exclusion fencing, educating the public about those sources of nutrients and reducing them are all eligible activities under the 319 program. And if you attended the funding availability session yesterday, you already know this, but the funding available ranges from about $45,000 to $70,000 per year, depending on the size of your reservation. And some of the other eligible activities are on this slide. There are some match requirements that they can be waived, especially if they're in a PPG. And all of your activities should be in your non-point source assessment report and management plan. And I think we can go to the next slide. So it might be hard to see here, so hopefully if you just need this contact information, you get the slides later, but I'm one of the main contacts for the 106 program, along with Kelly Williams, who's over there. And then also our 319 contacts are Howard and Larry, but you can also talk to your project officer if you have any questions. I'm not sure who's next.
All right, so I'm not part of the water quality standards team, but I will be speaking on behalf on my colleagues who provided the information and everything. So as you all probably know, a big aspect of the Clean Water Act is the development and the use of water quality standards. And a lot of people, when they think of water quality standards, they think it's just the merit criteria, but there are three key components. The first one being setting designated uses, which define the uses of the water body. This sets the goals and the expectations of how each water body is used. And so this could be efficient swimming, or water supply, and our cultural ceremonial uses of water. And these designated uses, they are needed to determine the criteria for water quality. So then the criteria, this represents a level of water quality that supports the designated uses. And these can be really specific numeric criteria or less specific narrative criteria. And the third piece is the anti-degradation policy, which is meant to maintain and protect good water quality when it is achieved or improved. So EPA has already developed some water quality criteria to address HAB-related issues at a national level. And there is criteria for recreational criteria or swimming advisory numbers for 2 cyanotoxins, microcystin and cylindrospermopsin, and that's to protect the public against illness while swimming or otherwise recreating in the water. And there's also nationally recommended criteria to address nutrient pollution in lakes and reservoirs. There's eco-regional nutrient criteria for rivers and streams as well. And tribes may want to use the national criteria, or you may want to develop more site-specific criteria tailored to your local conditions and uses. So, more site-specific criteria can be developed using location-based data and information for specific uses that you have in your water bodies. And this is where working with our water quality standards team and liaisons is going to be really helpful. So NSTEPS, it stands for Nutrient Scientific Technical Exchange Partnership and Support. Thank goodness for acronyms. NSTEPS is an agency-wide program, and it provides, it can provide you technical assistance and connect you with technical experts with experience in developing criteria. They can help you with all levels of water quality standard development. Even if your tribe is just thinking about this, you can contact the water quality standards team and discuss what type of technical assistance and what steps make sense for what your needs. Oftentimes, I know it's challenging to have the resources to work on water quality standards from start to finish. So this is a service that EPA offers. And as I mentioned earlier, one way that and stuff can be helpful. When sometimes criteria can be narrative statement, I mentioned that earlier, and that could be as broad as a statement such as maintain no nuisance algae. So instead of that sort of broad category, and if you want specific numbers to help accomplish that, the NSTEPS program can be used to translate narrative criteria related to HABs and nutrients into numbers that can be used for monitoring and assessment. So this is the contact information of the people who can help set you up, and if they're not the right person, then they can certainly direct you to the right people. So I see lots of phones up for pictures, so I'll let you guys do that before I move on. All right, so up next, I'm gonna pass the mic to Sarah and let her speak about the drinking water programs.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Gilly, and I work for the Tribal Drinking Water section, and I'm the contact for emerging contaminant programming in the section, and I'm excited to talk to you all about funding opportunities today. Tribes can apply for funding to address cyanotoxins via 2 grant programs, which address emerging contaminants. One is the Drinking Water Tribal Set-Aside Emerging Contaminants Program, which we abbreviate to DWTSA-EC. And the other is the Emerging Contaminants in Small or Disadvantaged Communities Program, which we abbreviate to ECSC. Both of these grants have $7 million allocated for fiscal year 2024, for a combined $14 million in potential funding to address emerging contaminants in drinking water. There's no cost share requirement, there's no underserved community requirement, so I'm aware that, those have big barriers to access for other funding opportunities. One distinction is that the ECSCC is eligible only to small communities. And EPA defines a small community as one that has a population of less than 10,000 individuals served. So I'll clarify, that's 10,000 individuals served by a water utility, not within a tribal population. And projects that address any contaminant listed in any of EPA's contaminant candidate lists are eligible, which does include cyanotoxins. Yeana mentioned earlier 2, microcystins and cylindrosporopsin, which have health advisory limits already defined. But we can apply funding potentially to any cyanotoxin, not just those 2. There's some other anatoxins, saxitoxins, etc. Projects funded through both of these grants must be otherwise drinking water tribal set-aside eligible, meaning they must meet the eligibility criteria for the drinking water tribal set-aside program. Some of that I'll list now. It must be funding a public water system. We can't fund private wells, nor can we provide funding for operations and maintenance costs. But I would encourage you to look at the full guidance, which has more information that I can include in my time here today. And there will be a QR code and link to our guidance on the next slide. And on that guidance, on that guidance, you'll also be able to see a larger list of project examples that are eligible, but for now, I'll name just a few. So some potential projects we could fund through these programs include technical assistance to evaluate emerging contaminant problems, programs to provide household water quality testing, including testing for unregulated contaminants, activities necessary and appropriate for tribes to respond to emerging contaminants, completing pre-development activities, such as determining if and where contamination exists, conducting initial monitoring to establish a baseline understanding, developing project planning and preliminary engineering documents, and designing projects in general. And then for the ECSCC, so that one's serving small communities, there are some additional eligible projects that you could apply for, including laboratory testing equipment, such as supplying water test kits for households and source water protection activities. So that program offers a bit more breadth. Next slide, please. So cyanotoxins are already being addressed by tribal utilities in Region 9. You can see up on this photo. EPA provided funding to develop a preliminary engineering report to investigate treatment alternatives to remove cyanotoxins from a tribal utility's water supply. And we would be happy to discuss creating more opportunities like that if you believe harmful algal blooms might be affecting your system. So how does one apply? This QR code I mentioned earlier, it go ahead, it links to our website, so if you go ahead and scan that code, you can scroll down to find any important documents, like the guidance I mentioned, which has instructions. But essentially, proposals are due by email on November 30th, so please do send those over. I understand it's a quick turnaround, but you will have more time to put together the full comprehensive application. That's just for the proposal. The proposal is a PDF form that you can fill out. It's also document listed on that QR link at the bottom of the website. Do note that some construction projects require additional documentation, like preliminary engineering report. So your application's needs will be unique. So please do go ahead and look at that guidance and make sure you have everything you need. I presume we'll have time for questions at the end, but if you do have any lingering questions at all, if you'd like any help with the application process, please contact me. My email is listed here. I'd be happy to discuss what we can do for you and how we can help your system address harmful algal blooms. And I'm going to hand the mic back over to Yeana. Thank you so much for your time, everyone.
Okay, so next I'm going to talk a bit about EPA research and how you can get plugged in. So EPA, if you did not already know, we have an Office of Research and Development. And the mission of that office is to provide the science, technical support, technology, and tools to inform EPA's mission to protect public health and the environment. So it already provides the scientific basis for the policy and decisions developed by program offices and are implemented by our regional offices. And generally, they're advancing scientific understanding of areas of concern such as harmful algal blooms and nutrient management. And under a specific program within ORD, the Safe and Sustainable Water Resources Research Program. So the Safe and Sustainable Water Resources Research Program, they do research and scientific analyses to innovatively and economically support safe and adequate supplies of water. So this includes research around protecting people's health and livelihood while restoring and maintaining watersheds in our aquatic ecosystems. And right now, ORD's research related to HABs, it can be organized into three main areas, which is the health effects and toxicity, managing HABs in the built and natural environment, science of harmful cyanobacteria bloom forecasting. So I'm just going to share a little bit about the research first, and then I'll talk about how you can get plugged in. So this science tool, if you've not heard of it, it's a joint satellite monitoring tool, joint as in joint by effort of NASA, NOAA, EPA, USGS, and SCIENS stands for the Cyanobacteria Assessment Network for freshwater systems. It's an early warning indicator for toxic and nuisance blooms using ocean color satellites. And they developed the remote sensing technology to monitor cyanobacteria through chlorophyll A and turbidity across the continental US. However, a caveat, this does not provide information on toxicity, but it is a good, helpful tool to get a sense of where these blooms are starting to pop up. This can be accessed as a user-friendly tool, and with all the satellite data, records, to show the concentrations of cyanobacteria in lakes across the US. And the app, there's an app for Android phones, and there's also a web app that can be accessed. I know there are some limitations on the size of water bodies due to the pixel size, but there is an update coming soon with high resolution data available. It's just not yet integrated into the app at this time. And just to talk through some of the other research going on so that you're aware, or some of the work that already does includes right now, they're working with states across the country to develop standardized methods for sampling and analyzing and assessing benthic HABs. And that's something that we're collaborating with, especially in our region, California, some California Water Board folks, and the Regional Water Board up in the north that are helping in developing and refining these sampling methods. There's also a lot of research going on early detection and management of cyanotoxins from qPCR. There's some research by Rio Reimagined that the graph is showing. There's cyanotoxin coding genes that are able to enable short-term prediction, so cyanotoxin production that could potentially help guide HAB production and mitigation efforts. There's another researcher, Alpine Handler, who's doing a lot of interesting work on assessing the risk of toxic HABs across U.S. lakes, trying to get a sense of which lakes are more likely to produce harmful algal blooms. And there's also a whole webinar series that will be coming up in the new calendar year to talk about all the different research, not just EPA, but across the board on the latest to help keep you all informed. So that's the research side. I also wanted to talk about the Region 9 lab support. So our regional office, we have a lab that supports our work in various different ways. But one thing that our lab has been doing for a few years now, they've been providing free analysis of samples for microassistant using the ELISA method, if you're familiar with that. There's some photos on the right to kind of show some snapshots of that methodology. And currently, they've been providing analysis about for our external partners, about 800 samples a year. Right now, the main, most of that has been to support the Klamath Tribal Water Quality Consortium. And the lab is looking to expand its capacity and capabilities for additional toxin analysis and drinking water methods in the future. It's, capacity is, I think, like the main thing here, but the main way to get plugged in for wanting to be more involved or sharing with me, the best way to get involved is to first connect with me, with if there's science issues that you're concerned about. It's very helpful for me to know what I can communicate to our regional science liaison, that's Swan, who's actually seated right here. And then same thing with the lab support needs. If you're interested in microassistant sampling, communicate that with me, and then the thing I can do is make sure that gets relayed to our regional science liaison and our lab manager, and ultimately they make the connections of how things fall under our priorities, and given priorities or varying capacities as well. So that's my contact information up there. I also have some business cards. I'm happy to talk after this session. Okay, great. So I want to now transition. Sarah, Ryan, are you online? Us online? Yes, we can hear you. All right, I'm going to now just transition the attention to our tribal partners who have worked with EPA, and they can share a little bit more about what working or using some of the EPA leveraging the EPA resources can look like. So take it away, Sarah. I can do that for you. Sarah, sorry, I was asked to have you pause because the folks cannot seem to hear you. Oh, we can hear you in person, but the folks online apparently cannot hear you. So I was asked to ask you to pause for a minute. I'll give you a indication that things are good again.
Tell her to say something, see if I can hear.
Can you try speaking? You're checking the chat to see if people can hear you. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Well, hold on.
On the wrong side.
Let me check in with the folks who are helping us on IT real quick.
Sorry, guys.
I don't think there's anything we can do about restarting the whole thing.
It's because she's off stage. Let me see. Let me try that. That might fix it.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, it looks like it's changed to on stage.
Okay, we can still hear you in person. Let's see if the online folks can give us an indication that whether they can hear you. Folks online, were you able to hear Sarah just now?
If you can hear me, let me know or let us know in the chat.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? The online folks, can you hear me? Yay!
We got you okay. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Is there another presentation after mine, just so I know time-wise?
Yeah, Sean Parker will speak briefly, but he said he only needs about 5 minutes or so.
Okay. Well, we'll move through quickly. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so moving into the slide of the impacts of cyanobacteria. If you had them on a water body near you, you know that the blooms can be extensive, and what ends up happening is that they're blocking the sunlight down to the bottom of the lake, and maybe that's a good thing if you've got a lot of invasive aquatic weeds. But if you have plants that are part of your food source, it's not a great thing. Also, when cyanobacteria dies, it, like any organic matter, will use up the oxygen in the water. So you can have fish kills that are associated with the die-off of cyanobacteria blooms. In 2017, we had a lake-wide bloom die-off and thousands and thousands of fish dying because of low dissolved oxygen because of this organic matter dying. The smells, just, it's unpleasing to even go in it. People don't want to go in it. And drinking water systems have to filter this stuff out to be able to even treat the water. So there's a lot of costs associated with it. Next slide, please. We started to become very aware of and certainly use the state of California's cyanobacteria or the cyanotoxin producers chart. This is really helpful for us in our program because we do microscopy in-house. We're able to send off for toxin analysis based on the genera of cyanobacteria that we're seeing. So we do note the primary and secondary, the most dominant and the second most dominant cyanobacteria in each water sample. And as I said, send off for toxins accordingly. And it's a great saver of money. Next slide, please. We also are very aware of California's suggested action levels that are based on the OEHA 2012 report, where they've determined the level at which there should be no health impacts And so you can see that there's human recreational as well as even, long-term, how does it impact each type of each toxin? How does it impact dog access and use? Cattle. I mean, there are cattle that go in the lake all the time around here. So it's very helpful to see what are these guidelines. Now, US EPA did in the last several years develop a human recreational use microcystin that was 8 micrograms per liter. So it's an order of magnitude higher. But in California, we do our signage and our and our recommendations for what activities are safe based on the state's guidelines. Next slide, please. So our monitoring program, as I mentioned, was started by Elam Indian Colony in Big Valley, Band of Pomo Indians, who I work for. These are the 2 shoreline tribes on Clear Lake. We did use various sources of funding, including, boy, I didn't put it on there, the 106 program, Clean Water Act 106, but we've also been able to put some funding in the GAP and other funding agencies, BIA and State Cal EPA. There's a URL at the bottom where you can read up on our program a little bit. Next slide, please. These are 2 pictures of the lake, both the site conditions of microcystis and Lyngbio bloom is the upper picture, and that's the microscopy below, showing what it looks like. We formed, after we got our first set of sampling events back in 2014, we formed a task force of local and state, regional, and federal agencies to basically call attention to the issue. We were in the we were within like the first couple sampling events, we were already well beyond danger at 17,000 micrograms per liter, about 100 feet from a drinking water system. So that task force is mostly not met in the last year and a half or so, but it's really led to development of a lot of different programs that are addressing some of the issues on the lake. Next slide, please. We have been doing a lot of outreach regarding the toxin levels, and on our website, you can find additional information about it. But if you move to the next slide, so this is part of a booklet that we hand out at outreach events where we're showing the continuously developed program of the of our cyanobacteria cyanotoxin monitoring program. We do, as I mentioned, water chemistry and microscopy are really important. We've also really linked it to tribal beneficial uses and worked with the state to make sure that they understand that tribal cultural uses have a lot of different looks to them, and the impact of cyanotoxins is not just a straight, it's getting on someone's skin, or maybe they swallow a little bit of water. It's a lot more than that. We also send off for toxin analysis of fish and shellfish, and we've started to sample waterfowl on the lake, and we are seeing exceedances of toxins and detection of toxins in the tissues of these foods. Next slide, please. And here's just a little bit more about the program through 2022. The signage on the right is showing the signs that are now placed along the lake that where the county is, basically informing people about the conditions. There's a QR code that links to our website. Next slide, please. And the website has the current toxin levels. Here are the monitoring locations. Some of these, the interior ones, are with partners who are on the lake on a monthly or quarterly basis, UC Davis and also County of Lake, and they get us samples that we send off for toxin analysis. We do the shoreline sites. And some of those sites were based on both tribal locations as well as public areas, homeowners associations, and just various important sites. Next slide, please. So really quickly, we know that there's the potential for human exposure to cyanotoxins and human impacts. And so that's really what our program's about. Next slide, please. But we're also looking at the drinking water side of things. More than 60% of the county residents get their drinking water from Clear Lake. That map shows the locations where those drinking water purveyors are. And there are no requirements for tap water cyanotoxin testing, but the state did require it in 2021 to show their toxin levels of their tap water. And so our program coordinated with that because we were showing the ambient water toxin levels. Next slide, please. We also look at fish tissue cyanotoxins, and as I mentioned, found it in multiple species. We've got some information about this on our website, and we're about to send off another set of fish and shellfish and waterfowl. And we are working with the state to request and require them to develop a subsistence level action levels. Right now it's a sports fish level. Next slide, please. It's a little bit about a fish cyanotoxin study. It was both spatial, temporal, and species varieties so that we could look at toxin levels over time in multiple species in multiple parts of the lake. And this was funded by Cal EPA Environmental Justice Grant 2018. Next slide, please. This is on our website. We also educate the public about the toxin levels, and there's our website, bbrancheria.com/Clear Lake cyanotoxins, as well as our Facebook page. You'll see pictures of the sites, the microscopy, the signage, the recommendations, URLs for resources, and other things like that. Really educating the public about the issues. Next slide, please. We are, specifically looking at trends. So this type of thing shows that the, recreation is impaired in multiple locations on the lake, and this is over and over and over again every year. Next slide, please. We are tracking, the signage and basically the toxin levels. This is a type of thing that we share with the county. Next slide, please. We're also doing benthic cyanobacteria monitoring in the creeks, and so we just started that 2 years ago, and we'll be building on that and also doing microscopy in those areas. Next slide, please. This includes, so this is very busy, I won't go into it, but we're also looking at habitat as well as a benthic cover of cyanobacteria and doing grab samples in the same location. So we're really trying to build this out. We're working on doing a QAP for this so it can be included in our 106 program, but right now it's being paid out of a CDC grant. Next slide, please. And I spoke a little bit about the tap water. This is just CalWatch is a program that it's a CDC funded project, 5 years that we're doing with the state. Next slide, please. We tested the tap water of multiple homes on the lake that are getting water directly from their own pipes. They're self-supplied or private systems. And we found intact cyanobacteria as well as cyanotoxins in a number of the homes. This has now been published in an AWWA publication as well as a morbidity and mortality report of CDC. Next slide, please. So it just shows the vulnerability of these systems that it led to a health advisory, public health advisory called by the public health officer and some additional tap water for these folks who were about 400 homes. Here's part of the AWWA. Move to the next slide, sorry. And let's just skip ahead. It's just showing toxin levels, ambient and the tap water. We tracked the type of treatment folks had. So that's in the CDC publication. Next slide, please. Running out of time, sorry. And also just looked at what, did some surveys of how people were impacted by toxin levels on the lake and the blooms. And that's part of the CalWatch program. Next slide, please. And finally, been running a program that is called Kickstarting, a Tribal Cyanotoxin Monitoring Program. So we've had one of those, and we have more planned where we're inviting tribes to participate and spend a week with us learning how to do this. Next slide, please. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. This is Sean. So a quick introduction. My name is Sean Parker. I'm with the White Mountain Apache Tribe. I've been there 2 years, and I am the water quality officer. So White Mountain Apache Tribe is located in eastern Arizona. We have about 1.6 million acres, over 7,000 miles of streams, and over 50% of our water goes into the Salt River and goes into Phoenix. So we're at the headwaters quite a bit. I was asked last week to come up and give a little presentation, so along with travel and everything, I'll be quick essentially. The White Mountain Apache Tribe, we're in the early stages of our understanding of cyanobacteria. It started out about 2 years ago. We did a test in our drinking water ponds, and it came back positive with cylindrical spermopsin and I think a noxin or microcystin. And that opened up a can of worms because it was in our drinking water system. From there, we knew we had to get this issue monitored and have a better understanding of what's going on so we can protect our people. So we did training with Sarah, actually. Sarah Randy just presented. We went to California, flew out here, met with Sarah for a week-long talk on HABs. We came back and we kind of gave us a little more questions. It gave us a good understanding of where to go and understanding how big this can be and all the education that needs to go into it, but also the lack of understanding as a whole, I guess, is kind of the bigger picture. It's kind of relatively newer, and there's still quite a lot to learn still. That's what I'm understanding. So as a person trying to start a program in it, I think if you guys start a program in it, take that understanding with you. You know, you're going to probably find new roads that haven't been found yet, right? And Sarah and California is doing a really good job at leading the way with this. If you're in a state like Arizona, there's not too much boards like California has and tools that can assist you as, or probably need to be in place that you might have to start. So recently we did another test. We did grab samples. We did in situ in the drinking water system in our ponds, and we collected crayfish. Crayfish is essentially a stat bag. If you guys understand it, you can get the tissue and it'll tell you the toxins in it. Fortunately, it came back negative with any cyanobacteria, cyanotoxins. But I think we tested too early because a week later our results came back higher with our monitoring. So that's that's what I said earlier was we're learning as we go. You got to know your own waters. So while we did the test and are doing the test at these ponds, it's fed by the North Fork of White River, our river. So naturally, with our thought process is where is it coming from the river? Because upstream there's a fish hatchery. So now when we're doing the benthic kind of sampling, we're trying to understand our waters better. Or kind of so we're testing for phycocyanin, chlorophyll A, just to get a better understanding of what we have there. So essentially, I'm going to get back to this. We're at the early stages of our monitoring. We're still understanding. We're still building. There's a lot of learning that has to be done. It's essential that we have a good working relationship with our tribal utilities and IHS. And we noticed little things that we've noticed is the increase in numbers during windy, when it's really windy outside. And also when the ponds have turnover, when it gets, the turnover that happens generally in the cold months. We did our QAP, which is essential so we can do this work, and doing the QAP is actually a task in itself. If you need help, with the QAP, let me know, or I know it's a big task. Moving forward, we need to add, within our water quality standards, nitrogen, phosphorus, kind of keep that in mind for the eutrophication that's happening. And we're also monitoring the fish hatchery with the PES permits a little tighter. Yes, but close. Thank you, and thank you guys for asking me, and thank you, Sarah, for your help. Thank you.
So I think we are at time, but I also know next is lunch. So if you guys want to stick around, I'm happy to answer questions. If folks want to, I'm thinking, does anyone want questions? Hey, maybe our team just did such a stellar job that you all are astounded and speechless. I'll take that as a good sign. But again, I'm happy. I'll stick up. I'll stay up here in the front for a little longer if anyone wants to chat with me, and whoever else can stick around. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the conference.